I went out and bought what's commonly referred to as a grease hammer. I'm not trying to sell this, but this is a commonly what's referred to as a grease hammer. And up front, what I'll say is, so what you do, this portion of it is pretty heavy. It's got an O-ring in it. This is heavy. This is heavy. And then what you do is you can put HEF, or you can put penetrating oil in here, and then place this on here, put it on your Zerk fitting, and then what you'll do is take a hammer and hit this. You don't want to go crazy hammering on it. You'll hammer it, and basically it's supposed to clear out the bad grease that's on whatever Zerk fitting you're trying to clear out. There's a flexible fitting as well that you can use, and that's for grease fittings that may be difficult to reach. You also have an additional grease coupler fitting. So this is how the tool is supposed to work. I'm going to use this pin right here. I'm going to spray some penetrating oil in it. Get some of this grease out of here. Just put the penetrating oil in there and mix it up with the grease. Grease basically falls right off. Next thing is to remove the Zerk fitting. Zerk fitting's out, and typically it's not the Zerk fitting that's the issue, and you can easily check whether it's the Zerk fitting or not even before removing it. You can carefully push the ball bearing that's in there, and if it moves in and out, then it functions as it should. But most of the time it's not the Zerk fitting, it's actually the joint. Next step is penetrating oil again. This time you're going to spray it where the Zerk fitting was. At this point, or before this point, you may want to wear gloves and goggles, because when you spray it into the joint, it's going to splash back. Let that sit for a little bit. The other thing you could do is take something that's pointed and swirl it around, because you want the penetrating oil and the grease to mix together so that it breaks the grease down. Alright, so I'm going to let that sit for a little while. This is all cleaned up now. I am going to put the Zerk fitting back on. The Zerk fitting is going all the way inside the socket, so it's difficult to get this started. This specific grease hammer is from Innovative Products of America. And what you're going to do at this point is fill this port right here full of penetrating oil. They don't recommend using aerosol cans of penetrating oil to fill these, only because there's air in it. So you're going to have a bunch of air and penetrating oil in here that you're going to have to try to get the air out of. And so I'm going to fill this up, even though I'm using an aerosol can, and then I'm going to show how to get the air out. So I've got some penetrating oil. Make sure I shake it up pretty good, and then what I'm going to do is spray it in here to fill it up. And you're going to see right away there's a bunch of air. And what I'm going to do, put the plunger in. And then what I'm going to do is invert it, give it a couple whacks on the plunger, you'll see a bunch of air coming up at the top. Alright, you can cover that with a cloth while you're doing it, but unfortunately you won't know how much air is coming out. But when I was hitting the bottom, I noticed that the fluid was starting to come out, so I know there's not as much air. And the way that you know whether there's a bunch of air in here is when you're hammering this in. If it feels very spongy and it's kicking back, it's because there's air inside it. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is put it on a grease fitting. I'm also gonna rotate it so it tightens on the grease fitting. All right, so now that that's on there, I'm gonna start hammering it. And then what you should see is in here and here, you should start seeing penetrating oil in the old grease coming out. You don't want to be overly aggressive doing this. That's one of the reasons why I'm not using a big hammer, because I don't want to be too aggressive about it. Alright, I'm starting to see some grease and penetrating oil coming out, but mainly right here. I don't see it coming out anywhere else. Loosen this up so you can take it off. I didn't see it come out too many places. I got some coming out here and right here, but I don't see any coming out anywhere else. But yeah, you can see where the penetrating oil and the grease mixed. I'm gonna do this again, but hopefully it's not just gonna keep coming out here, and it does come out the other side.